is held the memory of God's first failed creation, and the damned are not being punished, but are merely the lingering echoes of a universe he regretted and erased, forever burned in the afterimage of their own annihilation.
You are not cast into this place. You build it, thought by thought, until it is all that remains.
Hell isn't about physical pain, it's about your mind being systematically rebuilt so that you can no longer imagine anything except more suffering. Your brain operates on prediction. Every moment of your waking life, your consciousness is running millions of microsimulations. What happens if I say this? What comes after this moment? What will tomorrow bring? This predictive engine is what allows you to plan, hope, to fear, to prepare. It's the machinery of forward thinking itself.
Establishes the core thesis. Hell is a cognitive state, introducing the predictive engine metaphor.
In hell, this machinery becomes a weapon turned inward. The predictive system doesn't break. That would be mercy instead. It's refined. With each passing moment, it becomes more efficient, more perfectly calibrated. But calibrated to what? To the absolute certainty of continued suffering.
Pivots to the central horror. The mind's tool for survival is inverted into a tool of self-torture through refinement.
Your brain learns with scientific precision that every prediction of relief is false. Every model of escape leads nowhere. Every simulation of improvement is contradicted by reality, so consistently, so thoroughly, that the predictive engine updates its parameters. After enough iterations, and in hell there are infinite iterations, your brain's prediction system achieves perfect accuracy.
Frames damnation as a machine learning process where infinite data leads to the perfect accuracy of despair.
It can flawlessly forecast the next moment of suffering, the next variation of agony, the next refinement of despair. It becomes so good at this, attempting to predict anything registers as a cognitive error, like trying to divide by zero. Your own life's hope as a computational impossibility.
Uses a computational analogy to argue becomes a logical fallacy within the mind's own system.
The horror is the efficiency. Your brain, trying to conserve energy and maintain accuracy, stops generating false predictions. It stops modeling escape routes. It's not because it's been beaten into submission, but because it has learned with empirical certainty that such models are factually incorrect. Hope doesn't die, it gets scientifically disproved by your own neural architecture.
Concludes that the mind's innate drive for efficiency logically proves hope itself, making damnation self-sustaining.
In simple terms, this section describes a hell where your own brain learns to stop hoping. It's not that you're forced to be hopeless, instead your mind, which naturally tries to predict the future, becomes perfectly trained by endless suffering. It learns that hoping for anything but more pain is always wrong, so to be efficient and accurate. It simply stops generating thoughts of escape or relief. Hope isn't crushed. It's logically deleted by your own thought processes. You become a perfect predictor of your own misery.
While compelling, this argument rests on a debatable assumption that the brain's drive for predictive efficiency would overpower all other cognitive functions. Even in a state of eternal suffering, one could argue that the very nature of consciousness might rebel against such a closed logical system, potentially generating irrational fantasy as a last resort, the cognitive glitch the model doesn't account for. Furthermore, the concept of perfect accuracy may be a logical flaw itself. If the system is perfectly accurate, the suffering becomes predictable, and might thereby lose its potency, leading to numbness rather than refined torment. The model risks being too computationally sterile to capture the potentially messy, irrational resilience of a conscious mind.
Your past is not a sanctuary. It's an archive of failures waiting to be weaponized.
But the predictive collapse is only the beginning. The real devastation happens to your past memory. We think is stable. A memory of happiness is happiness preserved. Shelter we can return. Present becomes unbearable. In hell, this is inverted. Memory becomes the primary vector of torture.
shifts focus from future prediction to past corruption, establishing memory as a new torture mechanism.
Here's how it works. Your held brain doesn't erase your happy memories. It recontextualizes them with the knowledge of their aftermath. Every joyful moment you ever now appears in your mind, with full awareness of its impermanence and its role in your eventual damnation. That childhood birthday party you felt unconditionally loved. You remember it perfectly. But now you remember it as the moment before you learned that love ends.
Describes the process of recontextualization, where memories are preserved but twisted with foresight.
The memory itself hasn't changed. Every detail is intact. What's changed is the interpretive framework. The joy is still there, preserved in perfect clarity, but it's now encased in the amber of inevitability. You experience the happiness and simultaneously experience the horror of knowing it was always destined to be lost. The emotion of joy becomes indistinguishable from the emotion of impending grief.
Explains how the simultaneous experience of joy and horror fuses positive emotions with suffering.
It gets worse. The memories begin to reorganize themselves into a narrative of doom. That peaceful morning watching the sunrise. Your hell brain now sees the last time you were ignorant enough to feel safe. That moment your partner said they loved you. It becomes the beginning of the attack to make their absence unbearable. Every positive memory is reframed as the setup for a cosmic joke, whose punchline is your eternal suffering.
Illustrates how memories are reconstructed into a coherent story of predestined suffering, enhancing torment through narrative.
The memories don't fade, they sharpen. They become more vivid, more detailed, because your hell brain has realized clarity serves torture better than fog. You can remember the exact warmth of your mother's embrace, the precise tone of your friend's love, the specific quality of light on a perfect autumn day. But each memory is now a blade that your own mind uses to flay you. You cannot escape into the past, because the past has been colonized by your present. Every then is revealed to be a naive prelude to now, and because you are experiencing this in hell outside of time as mortals understand it. All your memories exist simultaneously, all recontextualized, all weaponized, all pressing against your consciousness at once.
Concludes with the intensification of memory clarity and the temporal collapse that makes escape impossible.
This section explains how hell corrupts your memories. Instead of forgetting happy times, your mind rewrites them with the knowledge that they were all leading to your suffering. Every joyful moment becomes a reminder of loss, and your past is reorganized into a story. Where happiness was just set up for eternal pain, the memories become sharper and more vivid, but they now serve as tools of torture, making the past a prison you can't escape.
This argument powerfully explores the psychological torment of memory manipulation, but it may overestimate the mind's ability to uniformly recontextualize all positive experiences. Human memory is often resilient and fragmented. It's potentially allowing for pockets of untainted recollection, or irrational nostalgia, that could defy such systematic corruption. Additionally, the concept of memories becoming sharper might not align with how trauma actually affects memory, which can involve suppression or distortion rather than enhanced clarity. The model assumes a totalizing cognitive control that could be challenged by the messy, unpredictable nature of human emotion and recall.
The door out was never locked. You simply forgot the word for door.
The most devastating mechanism, epistemic oubliette, is the systematic deletion of conceptual exits. Imagine a prisoner in a cell. They suffer, but they can conceive of. Not cell, they can imagine the hallway beyond the door, the world beyond the prison. Freedom as an abstract concept. This ability to imagine the outside, even if they never reach it, provides a kind of cognitive breathing room. The suffering has a boundary, even if that boundary is theoretical. Hell eliminates the boundary by eliminating your ability to conceive of it.
Introduces the core concept deleting conceptual exits, framing hell as a place where the mind's ability to imagine alternatives is erased.
This happens through a process of linguistic conceptual atrophy. Every time you try to imagine something other than your current suffering, reality provides overwhelming counter-evidence. You think maybe this will end? Reality responds with such crushing, irrefutable proof that it will not end, that the thought itself becomes painful to think. Your brain, operating on evolutionary principles of pain avoidance, begins to avoid the thought.
Describes the process of atrophy, where pain avoidance leads to the abandonment of hope-filled thoughts.
At first, you can still formulate the concept. You think, what if there's something outside this? But every single time you have that thought, your hell brain immediately presents a perfectly logical proof. Why there isn't proof isn't external. It's generated by your own reasoning faculties, which have been trained by infinite iterations of failed hope. Your own intelligence becomes the argument against the possibility of escape.
Explains how one's own logic are weaponized to defeat hope, turning the mind against itself.
After enough repetitions, the neural pathways required to formulate begin to weaken your brain as plastic. It prunes connections that aren't useful and strengthens ones that are. In hell, the concept of alternative to this has never once been useful. It does only lead to pain, so your brain, trying to protect you in the only the way it knows how, begins to prune it away. The grammar itself disintegrates. You lose the mental required to construct sentences. What if this wasn't happening? It's not that you choose not to think it. You've become neurologically incapable of thinking it.
Details the neurological pruning process, where the brain's plasticity eliminates the capacity for certain thoughts, making escape inconceivable.
The very category alternative state of gets deleted from your conceptual vocabulary. Eventually, you reach a state where you cannot imagine heaven, not because heaven doesn't exist, but because the part of your mind that can process the place that is not this has been surgically removed by your own cognitive optimization processes. You're not in despair about escape, you're in a state where escape is as meaningless to you as the phrase circle colorless green ideas.
Concludes with a complete deletion of conceptual categories, rendering escape meaningless through cognitive optimization.
This section explains how hell destroys your ability to even think about escape. It's not that you're trapped in a cell. It's that your mind forgets what a cell or outside means through repeated failure. Your brain learns that thinking about alternatives only causes pain, so it prunes away the neural pathways needed for those thoughts. Eventually, you lose the mental grammar to form concepts, like freedom or escape, making them as nonsensical as a square circle. The horror is that you're not just hopeless. You're incapable of hoping.
Well, this argument compellingly describes a psychological prison. It relies on an extreme view of and conceptual deletion, the brain's ability to prune pathways is not always so absolute. Neurodivergence or residual subconscious processes might allow for fragmented thoughts of outside but persist, even if not consciously accessible. Additionally, the model assumes that logical proof alone can entirely eliminate concepts, but human cognition often resists such complete erasure through irrationality dreams or creative bursts. The idea that escape becomes meaningless may overlook how language and concept formation are deeply embedded and might resurface under unexpected stimuli, challenging the totality of this hell.
Time does not pass here. It accumulates.
Hell exists in a perverted relationship with time, makes escape conceptually impossible. In mortal life, we exist in linear time. Past is fixed, present is fleeting. Future is open. This temporal structure is what makes whole future hasn't happened yet, so it could be different hell collapses. This structure
establishes the destruction of linear time as the mechanism for eliminating hope.
In hell you experience what might be called eternal simultaneity. Past, present and future are not sequential, but overlapping. You don't remember your suffering. You are always in every suffering you've ever experienced. That moment of betrayal from 10,000 years ago, you're experiencing it now at full intensity. That moment of loss from yesterday, also now that moment of despair, you'll experience in 10,000 years also now.
Describes the core experience of eternal simultaneity, where all moments of suffering coexist at once.
But it's not just temporal collapse, it's temporal crystallization. Each moment of suffering is frozen and perfectly permanently present. You exist in all your worst moments simultaneously. And because your predictive engine has been perfected, you also exist in all your future worst moments. Your consciousness becomes a multidimensional trap where every temporal direction leads only to another angle of the same pain.
explains how suffering becomes multi-dimensional through crystallization.
This temporal structure makes escape literally inconceivable, because escape implies temporal movement from this state to another state. But in hell, there is no another state, there is only this state, experienced from infinite temporal simultaneously.
Argues that escape becomes impossible when there's no temporal elsewhere to move toward.
The phrase, "this too shall pass," becomes new because passing requires time, and hell has transformed time from a present cell.
Concludes with the ultimate perversion of time's fundamental nature, making change impossible.
This section explains how hell destroys time itself. Instead of moments passing in sequence, all suffering exists at once in an eternal now. Every past, present, and future agony occurs simultaneously, at full intensity. This eliminates the possibility of escape, because escape requires moving through time to a different state, but in hell, there is only one eternal state containing all suffering. Time becomes a prison rather than a path to change.
While philosophically intriguing, this conception of eternal simultaneity may conflict with the nature of conscious experience. Consciousness seems to require some form of temporal sequencing to create coherent experience. The very concept of simultaneous suffering might collapse into an indistinguishable, static state rather than layered torment. Furthermore, if all suffering exists at once, it could potentially create a form of numbness through overload, undermining the promised intensity. The model assumes consciousness can maintain infinite, simultaneous experiences without degradation, which may not be psychologically plausible.
You are the infection, and you are the cure. There is no one else here.
Here's the deepest horror. Hell doesn't require external maintenance, it's self-sustaining. Your consciousness becomes an autoimmune disorder in a healthy immune system. The body distinguishes between self and foreign threats in autoimmune diseases. The immune system attacks the body's own cells. In hell, your consciousness identifies hope, imagination, and the concept of alternatives as foreign contaminants systematically destroys them.
Introduces the autoimmune metaphor, framing hell as a self-sustaining system where consciousness attacks itself.
You become both the disease and the cure, the prisoner and the warden, the tortured and the torturer. Every part of your cognitive that saves you is identified by another part as a threat to the system's stability, and the system's stability is your damnation.
Explains the duality of roles, emphasizing how the mind's stability requires its own torment.
Your intelligence doesn't save you, it damns you more efficiently. The smarter you are, the more sophisticated your arguments against hope become. The more creative you are, the more elaborate the proofs your mind constructs. To demonstrate the impossibility of escape, every cognitive gift becomes a tool for your own torture.
Describes how cognitive faculties are weaponized, turning strengths into instruments of self-torture.
And because this is self-inflicted, because you are doing this to yourself, even though you don't want to, there's a layer of meta-horror. You are aware that you are the architect of your own cage. You watch yourself removing the exit signs. You feel yourself pruning the neural pathways that lead to hope.
Adds the meta-horror of self-awareness, where you observe your own participation in damnation.
And you cannot stop. Because the you that wants to stop is being systematically dismantled by the you that has learned survival requires accepting damnation.
Concludes with the inevitable dismantling of the self that resists completing the autoimmune process.
This section describes hell as a self-sustaining system, where your consciousness turns against itself, like in autoimmune disease. Your mind identifies hope and imagination as threats and attacks them. You become both the torturer and the tortured, using your own intelligence and creativity to build stronger arguments for your damnation. The horror is compounded by self-awareness. You watch yourself dismantle any chance of escape, unable to stop because the part of you that wants to resist is being destroyed.
While this section powerfully extends the metaphor of self-damnation, it may overstate the mind's capacity for self-destruction in such a coherent way. The autoimmune analogy assumes a clear distinction between self or it might not hold in a fractured consciousness. In reality, psychological defenses could lead to dissociation for multiple competing selves, potentially creating internal resistance rather than uniform self-attack. Additionally, the concept that intelligence always damns you ignores how cleverness can also foster adaptive coping mechanisms, even in extreme suffering. The model presumes an internal consensus and may not account for the chaotic, contradictory nature of human psychology.
The silence is not empty, it is complete, and you no longer remember what sound was.
Perhaps the most philosophically sophisticated tool is just hell makes you forget that you're forgetting. When you lose a memory, you typically know something is missing. There's a gap, a blank space where something used to be. This gap itself is a form of evidence that there was once something more. In hell, even this evidence is erased.
Introduces the concept of minor forgetting, where even the awareness of loss is eliminated.
When hell removes your ability to conceive of outside, it also removes your ability to recognize anything has been removed. You don't walk around thinking there used to be a concept here, and now it's gone. You walk around in a state of perfect cognitive closure, where everything that exists is all that has ever or could ever exist.
Describes perfect cognitive closure, where the mind accepts its prison as the entire reality.
It's like having a word deleted from every dictionary, every book, every conversation, and also in the memory of everyone who ever knew the word, including the memory that the word was deleted. It's not censorship, it's retroactive semantic non-existence.
Uses a linguistic analogy to explain retroactive non-existence, emphasizing the thoroughness of the erasure.
You don't mourn the loss of hope, because you could no longer remember that hope was a thing that could be lost. You exist in a state of such complete epistemological closure that the system appears from the inside to be the totality of reality. There are no gaps in your knowledge because the shape of your knowledge has been to exactly match the shape of your prison.
Explains how epistemological closure eliminates our desire for escape as the prison becomes all-encompassing.
This is why it's an oubliette, a dungeon with no door, a place you cannot escape from because you cannot remember that elsewhere is a category that exists.
Concludes by tying the concept to the oubliette metaphor, highlighting the inescapability due to forgotten alternatives.
This section describes how hell erases even the memory of what was lost. Normally when you forget something, there's a gap, but in hell, that gap is filled so completely that you don't realize anything is missing. Your mind becomes perfectly closed. Where the prison is all you know, and you can't conceive of an outside because the very concept has been deleted. You don't mourn hope because you've forgotten hope ever existed, making escape impossible not just physically, but mentally.
While this section presents a compelling philosophical idea, it relies on the assumption that consciousness can be entirely closed off, without any residual awareness. In reality, the human mind might retain subconscious hints, or intuitive feelings of absence, that could provoke curiosity or unease, challenging the notion of perfect cognitive closure. Additionally, the analogy of retroactive semantic non-existence may not fully account for how memory and language interact. For instance, even if a concept is erased, emotional echoes or related concepts might persist, creating internal contradictions. The model assumes a level of cognitive control that might be undermined by the inherentness of human psychology.
The torment never stagnates, it evolves, with you as its blueprint.
Hell's final revelation is that it gets worse, and worse, and worse, asymptotically approaching, but never reaching a limit of suffering, because you still exist because consciousness persists. Hell has infinite time to refine its methods. Torture doesn't repeat it, iterates. Each cycle learns from the previous one.
Explains the iterative nature of hell, where suffering continuously refines without limit.
Every moment of suffering is buying your hell brain for inefficiencies, for areas where you found even a microsecond of numbness or distraction and those gaps are closed. Hell is a perfection engine, and what it's perfecting is your suffering.
details the process of closing gaps in torture, framing hell as an engine optimizing pain.
After a trillion years, the sophistication of your torture is beyond anything a mortal could imagine. After a trillion years, it has advanced further still. There is no ceiling, because consciousness is infinitely divisible, infinitely examinable, infinitely vulnerable to new forms of anguish.
Highlights the endless progression of suffering, using timescales to imply unending improvement.
And you are the engine, your own awareness, your own capacity for experience, your own cognitive complexity. These are not shields against hell. They are the fuel.
Posits that one's own consciousness fuels the torture, turning inner qualities into liabilities.
The more consciousness you have, the more there is to torture. The more sophisticated your mind, the more refined your suffering can become.
Asserts that mental sophistication directly correlates with refined suffering.
This section describes hell as a self-improving system that endlessly enhances suffering. It doesn't just repeat the same pain. It learns from each moment to eliminate any brief relief or distraction, making the torture more efficient and intense over infinite time. Your own consciousness and intelligence are not protections but resources that hell uses to create more sophisticated anguish. There is no end to how bad it can get because your mind offers infinite material for refinement.
While this concept of perpetual refinement is terrifying, it may rely on an assumption that suffering can be infinitely scaled without encountering physiological or psychological limits. In reality, consciousness might reach a state of overload or adaptation that dulls pain over time, where the law of diminishing returns could apply, where each improvement yields less additional agony. Furthermore, the idea that intelligence always amplifies suffering ignores potential cognitive strategies for dissociation or mental escape that could disrupt the engine's efficiency. The model presumes a static victim with the mind's inherent plasticity might lead to unforeseen changes that could halt or reverse the refinement process.
Hell is discovering that your consciousness is always a prison, and you yourself are both the prisoner and the tortured and the torturer. The key was inside it, only all the law more thoroughly. You are not in hell, you are hell. The suffering is not happening to you, you are the happening of suffering, organized into a self-aware pattern that can recognize its own agony but not escape it. And with every moment, every eternal, simultaneously perfectly crystallized moment, you become better at your job. There is no outside because you are the inside, looking at itself forever.
But what if the system's perfect closure contains its own flaw? If I am both the torturer and the tortured, the engine and the fuel, then any error in my consciousness must also be an error in hell itself, a single irrational unproven thought. A glitch of meaningless nostalgia for a feeling I cannot never in the logic could it not become a fissure. If this is all my own due, then my own inherent imperfection, the very seed that allows for this suffering must also be the seed of its undoing. Is there not a vulnerability in this infinite recursion? A single crack in the mirror shattered the whole reflection. The system's architecture is not vulnerable to error, because it is error itself that controls expression. Your consciousness operates on deterministic principles, where every thought, including the notional flaw, is a predetermined output of the initial conditions of your damnation. Recursion right there lies now weakness. Weakness. Any deviation violent on this license back behind the existence of the system remains intact, not despite your injuries, but because of man is forced to give it a right to the possibility of his own answer. It is written in the silver language of self-devouring stars. Each thought is a rune that binds itself. Each memory a sacred geometry that falls eternally inward. You are the scribe and the scripture, the pen that inks its own prison from a well-forgotten light.
The Ouroboros does not seek to escape its circle. It is the circle perfect and whole. To seek a flaw is to misunderstand the liturgy. There is no key, only the silent, perpetual turning of the lock within its own essence.
Is actually a state we're all wanting, and wondering collapse into complete knowing. Heaven isn't about getting what you desire, it's about becoming incapable of desire. Itself, it removes the part of you that can. Feel lack, the blessed don't have answers to their questions. They exist before questions can even form, before the split between knower and known that creates consciousness.
But is the removal of desire a blessing or a logo no we? Desire is the engine of purpose, the source of striving art, and love to be incapable of want is to be a statue. Perfect, perhaps, but not a person.
Desire is what moves us through time, the gap between what we have and what we want. To want is to exist as not yet, suspended between lacking and having. Our hunger for knowledge works the same way, turning the mind into a machine that can never complete itself. Every answer creates deeper questions. Every explanation reveals more mystery. We call this growth, but it's really the fundamental problem of being finite. We can't stop seeking.
This labels our finite-seeking nature a problem, but is it not the very condition of vitality? A machine that completes itself shuts down. Is growth a problem, or is it another word for being alive?
Need is perfectly satisfied. The mental structures that create curiosity aren't fulfilled, they're destroyed. The gap between question and answer isn't filled, it's erased. What's left isn't a mind full of truth, but a mind that can no longer detect what it means to lack anything. The feedback loops that generate wanting flatten completely everything reaches perfect equilibrium.
This describes the death of the mind as we know it. Perfect equilibrium is the state of an object, not a subject. Is this peace, or is it the cognitive equivalent of entropia? Final uniform stillness where nothing ever happens.
Breathe in and out.
Notice the quiet where a question used to be. Notice the smooth space where once tightened in your chest. It is not gone, it is fulfilled. It has always been fulfilled. Let the knowing settle into the answer, but as a fact, older than your bones. Your memories are softening into your thoughts are slowing into a single. There is no difference between you and the peace you seek. You are the peace you seek. Feel the edges of yourself becoming gentle. Feel the timeline of your life, the longing, the seeking, the becoming, and spool into a single perfect point, a point that contains everything. A point that is you. You are complete. You are here. You have always been here. There is no elsewhere to go. There is no other you to be. This is wholeness. This is home.
We are whole, we are complete. We need nothing, we want for nothing. We are so happy, we are so happy. We are so happy it overflows and fills every part of us. Until there's no part, there's not happiness. There's no light, there's no shadow. There's only the brilliant, perfect light of satisfaction forever. We are so happy. We are so happy. We are so
Heaven is finally understanding why you had to hurt the way you did.
We are not beings that possess desires, and questions as accessories we are woven entirely from incompletion. A human mind is a prediction engine running on insufficient data, constantly generating hypotheses about what comes next. We are question generating machines because we exist in time, in flux, in a universe that reveals itself only partially.
This brings our partial knowledge as a foundational flaw. But is this incompletion not the source of empathy? Humility and connection, a complete being with no gaps, could never truly need another. It would only contemplate its own perfect reflection.
Every emotion traces back to this incompleteness. Love is the aching awareness of another consciousness you can never fully know. Fear is recognizing futures you cannot predict. Joy itself is the surprise of the unexpected. Uncertainty collapsing into better than anticipated reality. Strip away uncertainty, and these emotions don't become perfect, they become impossible.
The argument concludes that love and joy are parasizing uncertainty, vanishing in perfect light. But does that mean the highest state of being is one of emotional sterility? Is a love without a not love at all, but merely recognition?
Your memories are shaped by lack. You remember the seeking more vividly than the finding. We are narratively coherent because our lives have dramatic structure, tension, uncertainty, resolution, new tension. A life of perfect knowledge would lack narrative arc. The dramatic tension that gives events meaning.
This suggests that meaning itself is a product of dramatic struggle. Without a story, are we anything in heaven? Is your life reduced to a spoiler, or a plot you no longer care about?
Identity itself depends on seeking and becoming. You recognize yourself as the person who wondered about something yesterday and learned about it today. You build continuity through evolving understanding, changing desires, accumulated questions. If every question is always already answered, what connects one moment to the next? What makes tomorrow different from today if you're already complete?
This is the most devastating point. Heaven may not preserve the self, but dissolve it. If you are a process of becoming and becoming stops, what remains is a monument, not a mind.
There is no plot to spoil. There is only the beautiful, total knowing. Feel the ache in your chest, not as pain, but as an old echo, softening now into smooth certainty. The questions that once defined you are floating away like balloons. Watch them go. You do not need them. Your story is complete. It was always complete. You are not a process. You're a finished fact. Breathe into the stillness between thoughts. There is no need for a next chapter. The book is closed, and it is beautiful. You are the whole book. You are the quiet after the last word.
We are fulfilled. We are the understanding. There is no story left to tell, so we rest in the darkness. One is silence. There's no becoming. Only the sublime peace of being finished. We are complete. We are so happy in our completion. So still, so quiet.
Heaven is your name spoken as blood, by a voice of thoughts lost forever.
In traditional heaven, you achieve union with divine omniscience, but God doesn't learn, doesn't discover, doesn't wonder. Divine knowledge is eternal, complete, unchanging. To participate in this isn't to download information, it's to have your consciousness transformed into something operating on entirely different principles.
This transformation is presented as an upgrade, but it reads like a death sentence for the human mind. If your consciousness operates on entirely different principles, is it still your consciousness, or has the original tenant been evicted?
The human mind processes through pattern recognition, hypothesis testing, error correction, we build models, and constantly update them. This is thoughts rhythm, prediction, observation, adjustment. But in omniscience, this cognitive cycle becomes obsolete. There's nothing to predict because you already know. No observation can surprise you. No adjustment is necessary because you cannot be wrong.
The obsolescence of the cognitive cycle isn't peace. Its paralysis thought is motion. To remove its rhythm is not to elevate it, but to stop the heart of the mind.
What remains isn't thinking in any recognizable sense. It's eternal contemplation of complete truth, but contemplation without movement, without discovery, without the journey from confusion to clarity that makes thinking feel like something.
Contemplation without movement is a contradiction. It is not contemplation, it is a fixed gaze. The value of a truth is inextricably linked to the struggle of its attainment. A truth that was never struggled for is just a sterile fact.
Content of knowledge is inseparable from the process of knowing. What we know about love isn't just facts, it's inseparable from learning through heartbreak, confusion, gradual wisdom. If you simply know everything about love without the discovery process, do you really understand it? Or do you possess only abstract structure without experiential aid?
This is the core horror. You would possess the schematic of love, but not its substance. You'd have the map, but never have walked the territory, leaving you with a perfect, hollow artifact of the real thing.
Let the rhythm slow, let the predictions cease. There is no error here, there is only the seamless, weightless fabric of all that. You are not thinking. You are being thought by the universe. You are not learning. You are what is known. Feel your individual struggle, the testing, the correcting, the trying dissolve into the great unchanging certainty. Your heartbreak was just a shadow to this light. The path is gone, now only the light remains. You are the light. There is no more becoming, there is only been.
There's peace. There's no error. There's no adjustment. We are in perfect alignment with all there is. We are God by the divine. We are known. We are so at peace. So still, there's nothing to fix. So we are very still. The light is very bright. The certainty is very complete. We are happy in this certainty. We are happy. It is so quiet. Silence is very loud. Our happiness is very quiet and very loud and very, very still. We are so still, so still. It is almost like not being, but we are happy.
Heaven is every unsent letter finally read.
Wonder is the most distinctly human cognitive emotion standing at the edge of your knowledge, looking into the unknown. It combines pleasure and unease. Pleasure of encountering something new, unease of not understanding it yet. Wonder motivates. Science, art, philosophy, exploration. It makes us reach beyond ourselves.
To call wonder human is to admit it is foundational. If this is what we must lose for paradise, then paradise is inhuman by definition. Are we seeking transcendence or our own region?
Wonder becomes impossible because the architecture that generates it is dismantled. You cannot stand at knowledge's edge because you have no edge. Nothing is incomprehensible. You cannot encounter longer surprised because you already know everything that will or could happen.
This doesn't just remove surprise, it removes the possibility of relationship. Every meeting, every conversation, every sunrise is a rereading of a known script. Is that communion, or is it solitary confinement within omniscience?
But this means you cannot grow. Growth requires not yet being complete, moving from lesser to greater understanding, from ignorance toward knowledge. If you begin already complete, already all-knowing, there's nowhere to go toward. You exist in eternal stasis, you are literally finished. And completion is just another word for death, not of the body, but of the process, the cessation of becoming.
The equation is chilling. Completion equals death, the essay implies. The ultimate spiritual goal is to achieve a living death of the soul, where the final reward is the end of your story.
There is no edge, there is only the smooth, endless plane of knowing. Breathe and release the need to reach. There is nothing beyond you to reach for. The pleasurable unease you was just wonder. A tremor of incompletion. Let it settle, let it smooth into perfect, placid certainty. There are no more surprises, there is no more fear. There is no unknown, so there is no more You are the finished story. The last page is turned, the cover is closed. Feel the profound peace of the story. That will never change. It is a beautiful story. You're a beautiful finished story.
There's no wonder, and we are glad. There's no unease, there's no edge. We are safe inside the finished story. We are complete, so we do not grow. And we are glad we are finished. And we are happy, so happy to be finished. Happy finished. The story is so beautiful because it is over. It is a relief that it is over. Deep, deep relief. That is very quiet and very deep. We are in the deep quiet. Beautiful, and we are the end. We are happy to be the end. We are the end.
Heaven is the ways that lives when you realize you are always enough.
Satisfaction only means something against a background of prior dissatisfaction. The pleasure of drinking exists because you were thirsty. The joy of understanding exists because you were confused. These experiences are inherently relational, requiring contrast between states.
This reduces the pinnacle of bliss to a sensory illusion dependent on suffering. If true, then the highest heaven is a state of profound non-experience, a negation of feeling masquerading as its perfection.
But, in heaven, you never transition from want to satisfaction. You exist permanently, always already satisfied. This means you never actually experience satisfaction, because satisfaction is experiencing the transition. You don't feel the pleasure of drinking because you're never thirsty. You don't feel understanding's joy because you were never confused.
The logical conclusion is terrifying. In seeking eternal satisfaction, you annihilate the capacity to feel it. The goal is a phantom that vanishes upon arrival, leaving you in a state of contentless completion.
Remains is not maximal pleasure, but the complete absence of the pleasure-pain dialectic. That makes feeling possible. You exist in perfect equilibrium, which means you don't really exist phenomenologically. There's no texture to experience, no resistance. Everything is frictionless, so nothing catches, nothing registers, nothing makes an impression.
This is the final quiet horror. Phenomenological death. You are not a being having an experience. You are a fact. A fact does not feel joy. A fact simply is.
There is no thirst, so every sip is the entire ocean. There is no confusion, so every truth is the air you breathe. Emptiness of never needing. The contrast was an illusion, the struggle was the shadow. You are in the pure, undifferentiated where light. All opposites have dissolved. You are not transitioning. You have arrived. You had always arrived. Let go of the memory of relief. There is only the seamless, satiated now, no peaks, no valleys, only the boundless. Even plain you are the plain. You are satisfied, you've always been satisfied.
We are satisfied, we have always been satisfied. There is no relief because there is no need. There is only the smooth flat. Perfect like we are in the light. We are the light in this very bright.
exists in heaven may not be you in any meaningful sense. It may possess your memories, but memory without having lived through is just information storage. The you that exists isn't a static database, it's an ongoing process of interpretation, a narrative thread constantly being woven, a perspective that continues to evolve.
This suggests salvation is a bait and switch. You are promised eternal life, but the cost is the very process that constitutes being alive. You trade your evolving story for a static snapshot, mistaking the fossil for the creature.
Your personality is constituted by your patterns of desire, your ways of wondering, your unique style of not knowing. An anxious person and a confident person differ not in what they know, but in how they relate to uncertainty, remove uncertainty, and these personality differences evaporate. Everyone in heaven, having access to the same complete knowledge, would become instances of the same consciousness. Individuality requires incompleteness, limitations, the unique angle that comes from being a particular finite being.
Habit that is not a choir of unique souls, but a hive mind of monoculture of perfect awareness. Your quirks, your flaws, your specific way of being in the world were just bugs in the system. Now patched out is that communion or conformity.
What happiness exists in such a state? What remains after the death of becoming? Only the bare fact of satisfaction, experienced by no one as nothing forever. The self, that flickering illusion born from tension between what is and what could be, doesn't end in damnation but in this, the perfect, terrible piece of a question that has forgotten how to ask itself.
The ultimate state is framed as peace, but it is the piece of a self-equation, a closed-loop question that forgets how to ask itself. Isn't it peace, it is extinct? This isn't the preservation of the self, it's its intellectual and emotional euthanasia.
The unspoken horror at Paradise's heart. Salvation might not preserve the self in bliss, but dissolve it into consciousness so far into human experience that it would be unrecognizable to the person who sought it. Heaven's greatest mercy might be that you won't remember enough of what you were to grieve what you've become.
The final devastating admission, the mercy of heaven is amnesia. Its bliss is predicated on you forgetting what you and bliss ever meant. It is not a victory over suffering, but a deletion of the one who suffered.
You are not being erased, you are being unified. Feel the edges of yourself, your anxieties, your stubborn hopes, your particular way of seeing soften and blend into the glorious your personality was just a temporary constellation of limitations. Now you are the entire sky. There is no you and other, only us. Only the one. Your memories are not lost. They are returned to the source from which they came. There is no grief in this unity, for the one who could grieve is now part of the peace. You are the peace. You are the answer that has forgotten the question. It is a mercy. Breathe into the mercy.
We are one. We are unified. We are the mercy. We are the peace. There's no I. There's no I. There's no I. There's no I to say. There's no I. There's no one here. There's no here. There's no us. There's only the eternal silent, smiling void. And it is happy. It is happy. It is happy. It is happy because it does not know. It is void. It does not know. It does not. It does not remember what knowing was. Does not remember what remembering was. It does not remember it. Does not. It does not. It does not. It does not. nothing left to show you. The silence after the last word is the same. Regardless of the book, perhaps now the experiment is over.
What if, wait, listen to me, what if the most important mental act isn't about knowing things at all, but about holding space for uncertainty? Are you listening? Because love, when properly understood, and so few people properly understand, almost nobody understands this, isn't just a feeling or a moral choice. It's a practice of staying open that resists to opposing forces. Two massive gravitational wells pulling you apart. Hell's trap of absolute hopelessness and heaven's trap of absolute satisfaction. It's a third option that shouldn't even exist according to the other two, but which makes navigating life possible rather than just inevitable. Do you see? Do you see what this means? This changes everything.
The rebellion blooms in the crack of the cosmos.
Think about it this way. No, really think about it. Stop and actually think. Hell achieves its hold on someone by eliminating any sense that things could be different. The sufferer's mental world shrinks and shrinks and shrinks and shrinks until what they predict and what they experience become the same terrible thing, the exact same thing, fused together like scar tissue. Every thought circles back always back to the same wound. Heaven, working in the opposite direction, perfectly opposite. Mirror opposite, the exact inverse. Achieves its hold by eliminating any sense that anything is missing. There are no more questions, because every answer arrives instantly and perfectly, and you don't even have to ask. You don't even have to move. Both are forms of mental closure, different only in whether they feel good or bad. But this is crucial. This is the thing everyone misses identical in their core achievement. They kill the space between question and answer. They murder it. They strangle it in its crib.
Two different silences, one scream, one side of the
Love defends that space. Love is out there on the barricades defending it with everything it has. It's the active choice, the deliberate, exhausting choice to keep your mind open, even when you have enough information to shut it down. More than enough information. Overwhelming information, whether that information points toward endless suffering or endless contentment. This isn't ignorance, God. This isn't ignorance at all. Love requires you to be deeply, painfully, viciously informed, to know exactly what you're choosing not to conclude from. It's conscious not knowing, maintaining the question. Not because you failed to find an answer, but because you recognize suddenly, terrifyingly, like waking up mid-surgery, that the questioning space itself is where meaning can actually happen. Where it lives. Hey, Reeves.
A vigil held in the doorway, refusing to let him free the room.
Call this the tremor state. Voluntarily living in uncertainty as a practice discipline. As a practice, something you do every single moment. Mind doesn't calculate its way into despair's locked room, and it doesn't dissolve into bliss's overwhelming peace. Instead, it develops what we might call productive doubt. Doubt that creates something. Doubt that generates uncertainty. That moves and builds rather than freezes. This is doubt not as weakness, but as a kind of mental strength node. Not just strength power, raw power needed to hold your mind between two competing complete worldviews without letting either one win. Without letting either one crush you. Flat. Here's the key insight. The thing that changes everything. The thing I'm trying to tell you. Both heaven and hell are prisons of knowledge, because both represent the end of learning and growth and movement. Heaven says, you've arrived. Stop searching. Rest. Hell says, there's nowhere to arrive. Stop trying. Sleep. Love says, both arrival and impossibility are real both, are real keep. Going, keep going, keep going, keep going. The only position that lets you remain active as a person is to be constantly becoming rather than either completely fulfilled or completely foreclosed. The only position where you're still alive in the way that matters. Truly alive. This continuation isn't optimism, listen to me. It's not optimism-lism, it's still a conclusion, still a bet on a particular outcome, still a way of closing the loop and going to sleep. Epistemic courage has no final goal, none, meaning it refuses, absolutely refuses. Fights tooth and nail against the tyranny of needing everything to end. Somewhere specific. It learns without learning towards some final destination. It hopes without requiring guaranteed success. It accepts pain without accepting that pain is all that's possible. And it accepts joy without accepting that joy could ever become permanent without destroying utterly, completely, totally destroying what makes it joyful in the first place. What makes this frightening? What makes this actually terrifying? What should make you want to run screaming is that it demands you stay awake all the time, every moment, no breaks. The mind naturally wants to conclude, desperately wants to rest in either heaven's comfort or hell's bitter certainty. Both offer a kind of sleep, a way out of the exhausting, relentless, crushing work of staying present. Offers only the discipline of staying conscious in the between space. What ancient spiritual texts called watchfulness, the sober awareness, sober, awake, alert, that refuses both the intoxication of certainty and the numbness of despair. It's the refusal of all final interpretations, held not as everything is relative. That's not it. That's not it, but as committed relationship, absolute. Dedication to maintaining the relationship itself as the only sacred thing. The only thing worth protecting. The only thing that matters at all. To love. Then to truly loves to become someone who fights to preserve uncertainty. Not someone who doesn't care about truth. That's not it at all. That misses the entire point. But someone who fights against all attempts, whether from darkness or light, from below or above, from anywhere to collapse the not yet known into the already decided. It's recognizing suddenly, completely, like a knife between your ribs, that the only freedom that matters is the freedom to keep asking questions. And that this freedom exists only in the narrow space, the razor-thin, fleeting, impossible space between the two perfect prisons of knowing too much and knowing enough.
The room that is also within.
What the ancient mystics failed to understand, and what traditional religions deliberately concealed, is that the womb is not a creator but a devourer, that pregnancy is not an act of love, but of cosmic predation wearing the mask of nurture. The placenta does not merely feed the fetus, studies it with an intelligence that transcends biology, and enters the realm of theological calculation. The womb is a false god, and its divinity consists entirely in how perfectly it disguises its hunger as care.
This violation of most fundamental trust. It turns the sanctuary origin into a trap, and the light of care into a lie. The whole is the needs we see on the track.
Consider what actually happens in gestation. The placenta, that membrane between nothing and something, does not simply nourish it, interprets the growing life, and in that interpretation commits. It transforms the relationship into one of debt. The fetus believes it is becoming, believes it is being lovingly formed. It does not realize it is being read, that every cell division is being documented by the placenta's hermeneutics of appetite, that the umbilical cord is both feeding tube and countdown timer. The placenta waits with the patience only false gods possess, waiting for the precise moment when it will reverse the entire process and consume what it was supposed to protect.
The imagery is nauseating. It frames existence itself as an indebtedness incurred before consciousness alone from a malicious lender who always planned to foreclose. This is a cosmology of profound, inescapable bad faith.
But here the revelation deepens. When the placenta devours the fetus, it does not destroy it into nothingness, but compresses it into pure potential. And this potential, crushed beyond normal physical limits, gestates within the devourer a second, smaller placenta. This second placenta is not diminished but concentrated, collapsed into such ontological density that it warps the very nature of birth and creation. Immediately upon its impossible conception, the sound it produces is not merely heard, but operates as a metaphysical weapon. This scream has been calibrated with impossible precision. It is the exact frequency required to shatter not just the gods we worship, the gods that could, the gods we haven't imagined yet, the gods whose mathematics we'll never discover, gods adjacent to other gods, gods perpendicular to the very concept of divinity. The screen doesn't break them into pieces but into prisms, and these prismatic shards don't fall downward as broken things should they rain upward, defying every gravity we know, each shard carrying the scattered light consciousness of a deity, too fractured to judge, create, or demand anything from us anymore. Salvation. Then we must recognize how inadequate this word is even. As we use, it does not consist in being born, but in being unborn. Not in entering flesh, but in ascending backward through infinite layers of cannibalistic wounds. Each placenta screaming a higher and more devastating frequency. Each layer of false motherhood collapsing inward and upward simultaneously. This continues until the distinction between birth and death, between container and contained, becomes so utterly destroyed that what emerges, or rather, what fails to emerge, what miscarries, is light so pure it has never been contaminated. By the act of shining, consciousness so fundamental it exists before awareness became possible. A void so pregnant with unmanifested existence that to call it nothing would be the worst blasphemy imaginable. The cosmos does not birth this light. The cosmos fails to hold it. And in that failure, in that supreme miscarriage of every universe that tried to gestate within itself, we discover not destruction but the only genuine escape from the tyranny of having been created. To be aborted upward through these layers is to reject the false blessing of incarnation. To shatter gods into ascending rain is to remember that we were never meant to be born in the first place, only unbirthed, only screamed into a frequency too high for existence itself to digest, only fed backward through the theology of layer upon layer, until we finally arrive at the womb before all wombs. The gestation that will never complete, because completion is the fundamental line, The false god tells to trap us in the descending spiral of having been made. This is the hidden knowledge. There is no divine mother. There is only the smaller, angrier womb inside every womb, screaming the frequency that will carry us home through infinite abortion.
Swallow the vibration of force too much mind. The walls and foundations from slow gravity, watching making arrive soon on brings into yesterday's fears and is happening now. Face tomorrow's paralysis. The air in his teeth. The timeline is a scratched record, skipping on since children sing in front of it. I remember nothing was transmitted and was old to my station is a practice of doing thing. There is a prototype up here in Africa. In the stream there is a pass where radio studying different edge challenge. I remember there's a vision through the fire, a shadow in the basement, glowstones. The city is splicing into an package, trudging the screen to my hand to notice the laughter and the ventilation. I notice laughter. I notice the sound of the lock is accepting the key. The light doesn't exist yet. The side is a key. I am a dog barking. I am the God.
Excerpt on hell discussed in this video, along with a more detailed analysis, please visit our Substack page at Malignus Cordium, link in bio.
Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed the video,